Okay, so I would like to dedicate this year to Chonan Ben Yisrael Halevi, the late Robert Lieberman, and then Kevin wanted to do a dedication.
It's my grandfather, my mother's father's Yotzat Tzvi Ben Betzalel tonight, starts tonight.
Okay, wish you long life, Kev. And your
Thank
mom
you.
also. Okay, teach us before we go to the Gemara share.
So just some more halachas here. And in Ki Tavo, which is going to be this week's parsha, at the end of the parsha, in the maftir, it's for a second time, twice, it actually says that you have to remember what Amalek did to the Jewish people, and you have to eliminate Amalek from the face of the earth. Unfortunately, Amalek, we don't know who is actually a descendant of Amalek these days because of intermarriage and generational changes, etc. Because Amalek didn't attack the Jewish people when they were on their way in the desert, when they were out of Egypt. They attacked them at the back, and the women and children. The cowards attacked the weakest, and so it says here. Therefore, when Hashem gives you peace from all your enemies and all the enemies around you in the land that Hashem, your God, your Lord, is giving you to occupy as a heritage, you must obliterate the memory of Amalek from under the heavens. You must not forget. And it's done, I think, before Pesach and before in the second week of Elul, which is this week. So it's mentioned. The actual it's mentioned twice, I think, Damon, if I'm not mistaken. It's not only in this week's parsha. Amalek is recited on two occasions.
Well, yes. So what point did you want to make on Amalek?
So we don't know. No one knows who Amalek is these days. Who the descendants of Amalek are. There could even be Jews these days who married in and assimilated amongst the original Amalek tribe. So no one knows who they actually are.
I don't know who the tribe is, but I definitely know who some of the individuals are.
Well, look, it's
I just thought I'd share that with you guys.
It's in Devarim, Pasha Beshalach.
Yes.
It's in both. Beshalach, it's in Shmot, chapter 17, verse 8 to 16, and in Devarim, Deuteronomy, chapter 25, verse 17 to 19. So those are your two sources, guys. All right, let's get started.
Yeah, thank you.
And it's not memory; it's Chat GPT. I would say
I had a feeling you went on there.
No,
I had a sneaky suspicion because you want to get your money's worth. I agree with
Rabbi Chat GPT, Damon.
Yeah.
The Chat GPT is amazing, though.
No, it is amazing. And when you ask it some very weird and naughty questions, like how do you commit bank fraud, and all, it says we suggest you see a psychiatrist and deal with the more underlying issues. Try it.
Did I give you a number at least?
No.
Nothing. That's useless.
So, all right, guys, we're on the Mishnah. We're going to hit the Mishnah, but we're still on the previous Mishnah. We're on the 111th daf. And there's a quote from Bab Midbar, chapter 5, verse 8, if you remember. We went through it before. So it discusses if one who brings his robbery to the temple and makes restitution before bringing his asham offering, he's discharged his obligation. But if you bring the asham before bringing his robbery, there is no obligation discharged. So we want to see a biblical source for this ruling. We went through it before. It's obviously bringing a different point. Rava said, you look in Midbar chapter 5, verse 8, and it says that guilt payment that is returned is for Hashem, for the Kohen, aside from the ram of atonement with which he shall provide his atonement. So obviously this implies that the money is paid first before the atonement. Because Rava would seem to mean that the expression aside from the ram of atonement implies that the payment of the money precedes the offering of the ram. Okay? So we want to see if there's a problem with it, because Rava's exposition is questioned. One of the rabbis said to Rava, but according to this reasoning, if you want to consider the verse, and it's in a different pasuk, I'll tell you where it is, but it basically says, aside from the morning olah, that is the tamid olah, shall you make these musaf offerings. Okay? So there, what is it talking about is, if you look at Bamidbar again, but slightly different chapter 28 this time, not chapter 5, and it's verse 23. If you look at the verse, it appears in the passage that describes the musaf offerings of Pesach. And it states that the musaf offering shall be made aside from the daily tamid offering. So the tamid was basically a communal olah offered each morning and each evening. So if we want to use this concept of aside from, it's implying that the musaf is aside from the morning olah, meaning that if you use the previous context of the restitution aside from the ram of atonement, it's saying, but that seems to imply that the musaf is going before the morning olah. And guys, we know that's impossible. Musaf comes after Shachrit in terms of davening, and it's based on the offerings that were made at the time, in this case particularly Pesach. So it was saying, so how can you determine, just because it's first in the phrase, when Rav is using this term aside from, it could mean after, because we're saying aside from the morning oleh, for the Talmud, you've got to make the musaf offering. So the musaf comes after, so we say, well, which order is it? So as the Gemara said, will you similarly say so that if the verse implies that the musaf offering are made first, before the morning Talmud offering? So what we're questioning here is, according to Rabbi's understanding, it would seem to be that the meaning aside from could either mean first or it could mean afterwards. So we want to say, well, how can it be both? Why? Because in the previous pasuk in Numbers, it's implying that the restitution must be made aside from the guilt payment, which means first. And here it's saying that the musaf is made aside from the morning olah, which means the musaf can't go first. Musaf is after shach. So we're saying they're contradicting each other. But it was taught in the Brisa, from where do we know that nothing should precede the morning tamid? The Torah therefore states, and he shall arrange the olah upon it. Okay? So that no offering shall be burnt on the altar prior to limbs in the morning tamid. Okay. And then what we're going to do is we need a little bit more of a chumash backup on it, because the Torah therefore states, and he shall arrange the olah upon it. So what that is saying is in Leviticus Vayikra chapter 6 verse 5, the verse states, I'm not going to read the Hebrew, I'm better in English, the Kohen shall kindle wood upon it. What's upon it? Upon the altar, every morning, and he shall arrange the olah upon it. So obviously, guys, this indicates that after the altar pyre is prepared each morning, the olah, a reference to the tamid offering, shall be placed upon it before anything else. So we're saying before there's a musaf, is definitely going to be a morning tamid offering. Now, if that's the case, and we've got sourcing for it, what do we do with the issue of the atonement for robbery? So Rava said in an explanation of this particular brisa, if you're using the term olah, it implies the first olah mentioned, which is the morning tamid. So we can see that when the Torah states that the musaf shall be offered aside from the morning olah, this case it means after the morning olah. So then the question is, how can you say that the Torah orders the robbed property shall be returned aside from the ram of atonement? It means before the ram of atonement. Okay, guys, do you get the question? Okay, Kev, what is the question?
I don't know the question.
Okay, Gav, you want to take a stab at it?
I can't. I'm not feeling well, but I'm listening. I am listening.
All right, Arthur, you
I've got a
want
lot of
to
Can't talk,
David, you've
I can't
pleaded
give it over.
no, God forbid. Arthur, you've pleaded the 5th all week. Do you want to take a go?
I'm going for the 6th now, moving up one.
All right. So, all right, guys, listen. So, this is the issue: is that when it uses in the Chumash the term "aside from," in the case of robbery, it says, "Listen, you have to make the asham," and we learned here that the asham is actually known as the principal restitution. In some cases, it's known as the offering for a false oath, but in this case, it's the restitution, and the ram of atonement is known as atoning for the false oath. So we want to know which order, because we learned this whole big deal yesterday and the day before about if it's in the wrong order, it's not acceptable. As Kevin said, kind of what's the difference? So there seems to be a big deal, and there is a difference. So we're saying, okay, so where do we get it from? From the Chumash, Bamidbar chapter 5, verse 8. And since it's saying that asham is made aside from the ram of atonement, it means the principle is made prior. So we're saying, okay, so that's where we got it from, except there's a bit of a problem. And what problem is that, Kevin? The problem is later on in Bamidbar chapter 28, not chapter 5 anymore, and this is verse 23, it's saying that, listen, on Pesach, there's a Tamid offering in the morning, and then it says aside from, and then it discusses the Musaf offering. But the problem is the way it's done in that particular verse. And particularly this problem reasserts itself when if we look at Vayikra Leviticus chapter 6, verse 5, where it says, the Kohen shall kindle wood upon the altar every morning, and he shall arrange the olah upon it. So that indicates that after the altar, for the morning Tamid, there should be something placed in it. But here with the Musaf offering, it's saying the Musaf offering aside from the Tamid offering. So the problem is here is when it's saying the Musaf aside from, if before we learned the principle from Rava of saying aside from means before in the case of robbery, you can't say the Musaf offering comes before the Shachrit, can you? Kevin?
Hmm?
Can you repeat what I'm saying?
No, I'm listening.
Okay, Gav, you want to take some sort of go at it? I don't.
No, I've got,
The Musaf
I've got-
offering can't come before the Shachrit, or it has to be in
Yeah.
order.
Yes, so
this is
And the
this
mincha
is
offering.
conflicting with the main order. That's why this
yes,
is the.
yes,
No, I understand.
exactly. So what's happening in the case of robbery is it's saying restitution must be made aside from the ram of atonement. The asham in this case is the principle, and we're saying the word aside from according to Rava means before. So restitution is paid before the ram of atonement for the false oath, and we say, okay, good. So that's what this big deal is about. It's based on the Chumash. There's a certain order. So we're saying that's cool. But we're saying there's a problem. Because if you look at the place in the Chumash where you've got numbers in the 28th verse, not the 5th verse, it's saying the Musaf, aside from the Tamid Ola offering, which is in the morning. So if you want to say according to Rava, it means before. How can Musaf go before Shachrit? That's the question in the Gemara. It's as simple as that. We're saying, how can you interpret it that when we've just shown you another example that it's obviously after? Musaf is always after Shachrit. Or because what is the davening based on? On offerings. Today we do davening, then it was offering. So Musaf would come after Shachrit. So we're saying here, if you want to use this term aside from, and it means before, how are you going to know that the principle is paid before the ram of atonement for the false oath? It seems to contradict it when you look later in Bamidbar. So we want to know how Rava answers the question. And Rava said to one of the rabbis that questioned him, I actually derive the law from the clause with which he shall provide him atonement. In other words, there's this thing, shall provide him atonement. And that's stated in the future tense. So what does it imply? But it has not yet provided him atonement at the time the money is returned. So all it's saying is that if you look at Bamidbar, Numbers chapter 5, verse 8, since the verse does not say with which he provided him atonement, but rather the guilt payment, aside from the ram of atonement, with which he providing him atonement. We learned that basically the guilt payment has to, which is the principle, has to be made by the Kohen before offering the asham. But in this other case with the Musafin, it's made after the Tamid, and it's not a contradiction, because what you have to bear in mind is it's not a set case where aside from means necessarily before. Whether you use it before, whether you use it afterwards, depends on the context of future or past or present tense. So you can't take this phrase aside from and say there's a unanimous rule or unilateral rule that it means before the other, because otherwise it would use the word before. It means aside from. In other words, they complement each other. You need both aspects in order to have valid offerings. In the case of Pesach, you need Shachrit and Musaf, Tamid Ola, and you need Musafin. And then in the case of robbery, you need the principal paid and the asham in order to effect atonement. So we're saying that the context depends on whether the actual whole structure of the pasuk is in future tense or present tense. And then you can use the word aside from to either mean preceding, succeeding, depending. Anyway, I hope I've succeeded in this. So
I can't repeat that succeeding and this whole last part here, but I am hearing you.
Yeah, in other words, you can't just take one word out of context it's saying. According to Tosfot, you've got to look at the sentence structure, past and future tense as well. Now, let me just take 1 second to pause the share. Started. All right, let's go to the next part, guys. So the Mishnah concluded, if the robber gave the Kohen the principal, but he did not give him the one for surcharge, the one for surcharge does not hold back his atonement. Now, one of the reasons is that the 1/5 is exactly that. It's a fifth of the huge sum of money, and therefore it's not significant enough to really hold back atonement. Whether or not you have to pay it for atonement, eventually, we learned that when they say you still get atonement, it doesn't say that you shouldn't pay. Firstly, it's talking about here a case where the convert died, he left no heirs. So it's not paid to the principal victim, it's paid actually to the temple. That's one factor. Second factor that you guys have to bear in mind is that one for surcharge is not crippling the asham. In other words, if you bring the one for surcharge, what we learned generally is you bring the principal, the one for surcharge, and the asham. But whether you pay the one for surcharge before or after the asham doesn't make the asham invalid. Whereas if you pay the asham before the principal is so substantial compared to a ram of atonement that it does affect whether the offering becomes invalidated or not. So the rabbis taught in a brisa, and what does this brisa actually discuss? Well, it begins with a discussion about this thing of Me'ilah. Now, Gavin, what is Me'ilah? We've done this. I know Kevin knows. He told me before.
I think.
I know he knows. I want to test Gavin.
What? He's such a bully. Me'ilah, now I remember this. I've just gone blank.
It's not half of, it's not half of a breast. Let me put it like that.
Yeah.
Me'ilah,
Damon, I think it's stuff that hasn't been consecrated to the temple that you can change the status of it. Or is it? Wait a minute. Either it is or it is. It's or you can't. You're not allowed to use it for unholy purposes or
excellent. I knew you knew the answer. So that's exactly it, Kevin. As Kevin said, it's the sin of misappropriating temple property, which is hegdesh, for mundane purposes or personal use. Excellent, Kevin. I just said it in a more technical way, but you said it, make it sound fancy, but Kevin explained the concept.
Well, it's a good thing we didn't wait for me to answer, because I would never have got to that. So we would have been here forever.
But at least the temple would have come back by the time you answered it, so it might have been good.
Yes,
so
that might have happened, yeah.
So
And I
basically,
should know. I should
Yeah.
be ashamed of myself. Yeah.
no, you
Sorry.
should know. It's no, we don't have the temple now. How should you know? Anyway,
No, but I'm a Cohen. All right.
it's okay. So
Scott, Kevin, well done.
in Vayikra, Gavin, Leviticus chapter 5, verse 14 to 16, that's where it's stated that one unintentionally, it's not a purposeful thing, because if you remember when the non-Jew used temple vessels for Purim, he died. We're talking about an unintentional violation for that prohibition. So there's two remedies. Firstly, you've got to compensate the temple treasury in the principal value of the item that he misappropriated. So what I'm saying is, if there was temple treasury and there was 100 zuz worth of an item that you used, what you have to do is then donate an extra 100 zuz to the temple treasury for misappropriating it unintentionally. Now, there's another component which you have to add a 1/5 surcharge on the principal value and bring in a ram of an asham offering. Now, this is not an asham offering for a false oath. Remember, asham also means a guilt offering. Okay, now you don't have to be a genius, guys, to know that if you're paying the principal for misappropriating temple hekdesh property, and you have to pay that value of the principal value. You have 1/5 surcharge and bring a ram of a guilt offering of atonement of a sham. This is exactly mimicking what a robber has to do in order to get forgiveness, because the consequences suffered by a Me'ila offender exactly parallel those suffered by a robber who commits perjury. What do we mean perjury? He stole an item. Under oath, he denied having stolen the item. He has to pay the principal back for that which he robbed, was to do the 1/5 surcharge for wasting the victim's time, and the asham offering to Hashem is an atonement for using his name in vain. And the 1/5 surcharge is also, by the way, for using Hashem's name in vain, but it's paid to the victim for actually putting him through all that trauma. Okay, so the two cases mimic each other. That's why we're getting that particular pasuk. All right, so now that that's the case, the rabbis taught in the Brisa, from where do we know that if one who misappropriated temple property brought the principal payment for his misappropriation to the temple property, but he did not bring his asham offering, or guys, he brought his asham offering, but he did not bring the principal payment for his misappropriation, is not discharged his obligation and still lacks atonement. So we are saying he would need to bring both. So the Torah therefore states, and the Kohen shall provide him atonement with the ram of the asham, and it shall be forgiven for him. Okay, so where do we know this? In Vayikra, Leviticus chapter 5, verse 16. The Bryce is going to demonstrate that the word asham, in this case, actually refers to the principal amount that he misappropriated, exactly like in the case of a robbery. And the 1/5 surcharge that a perjurer would have to make is the same case for Me'ila, and the ram of atonement for the false oath, and in this particular case, for the injury to temple property of the inappropriateness, is known as the ram of the asham. So the standard asham is the principle. The ram of atonement means atonement either through false oath or one of the penalties for the Me'ila. So we're saying that you would need both in order to get atonement, both in the case of Me'ila as well as the case of a robber. So the Kohen shall provide him atonement with the ram of the asham, and it shall be forgiven from him. And from where do we know that if he brought his asham offering before he brought the principal payment for his misappropriation, he has not discharged his obligation? So now the first thing we said is that if you look at Me'ila and the case of robbery, both the principal, which is known as the asham, has to be repaid, as well as the ram of atonement for the infraction. And so we're saying both are needed. But now where do we learn the principle that the restitution or the value of the Me'ila item or the robbed item has to be paid before the asham for the infraction of what was done. So the Torah states with the ram of the asham, which implies that what do we say the asham means here? It means the principle. So if we say the ram of the asham, it's the ram attached to the asham, meaning the principal is paid prior to bringing of the ram, meaning it's a complement. Okay, in other words, when Rashi uses the word of complements, it's like a dessert that complements the main dish. Nobody just has dessert, meaning the asham for the infraction complements the payment back of the principal value of either the me'ilah or the robbery. So we learn in the way that the pasuk is drawn that the principal has to be paid before the asham, and it's essential for atonement. And we learn this in the case of one who misappropriated the property of Hegdesh. But paying the one for surcharge is not essential for his atonement. So basically, if a transgressor offers the asham after paying only the principal, but he hasn't yet paid the surcharge, he has attained atonement, though he still owes the surcharge to Hekdesh. So according to the Ravad, he actually has got atonement, but he still owes the one for surcharge. And there are other opinions saying that he doesn't get atonement until this one for surcharge, but because the 1/5 is quite a small amount, it doesn't matter whether it's paid as it should between the principal and the asham or after the asham. As long as it's paid, there'll be atonement. Okay, but as long as the principal is paid before the asham, that's the main thing. And what we're using in both these cases are pasukim that are making this parallel between the penalty of be'ilah, appropriating temple property for mundane use inadvertently, or robbery and a false oath. So guys, having established the law regarding one who misappropriated temple property, the Bryce is actually linking this to the law of one who robbed his fellow and swore falsely to him. And we derive the law of one who misappropriates Hekdesh from the one who robs a commoner, and the law of one who robs a commoner from the law of one who misappropriates Hekdesh. That's what it says in the Gemara. So we know in both these cases that if the sinner brings his asham before repaying the principal, he has not discharged his obligation, and the asham is disqualified. So regarding me'ilah, the brasa just derives this from the verse, the ram of the asham, meaning the ram of atonement has to accompany the asham being the principal. And regarding a perjurous robber, not the me'ilah case here, who lies under oath, we derive it from the verse, which he shall provide him atonement, in other words, in the future tense. Now, their laws are identical in this regard, guys, because we learn the cases are analogous, and we can then compare the other details as well. It's like a hekesh, okay? So, now that we've established the law regarding both, we basically have to derive the law of one who misappropriates Hekdesh from the law of one who robs a commoner as follows. Okay. Just as the asham stated there in the passage of one who robs a commoner refers to the principal, so to the asham stated here in the passage of one who misappropriates Hekdesh, known as me'ilah, refers to the principal. And we derive the law of one who robs a commoner from the law of one who misappropriates Hekdesh as follows. Just as with respect to one who misappropriates Hekdesh, paying the one for surcharge is not essential for his atonement, so too with respect to one who robs a commoner, paying the one for surcharge is not essential for his atonement. All right. Now, guys, on that particular note, I want to thank you because you've done a heck of an achievement. And we've got to say this verse where we finished chapter 9. We shall return to you, Hagozel 8:7. We finished chapter 9, and Simeon Shapiro said that chapter 9 of Bava Kamma was a very tough chapter, and we've accomplished that. We've only got chapter 10, and we finished Bava Kamma.
You said Hagozel 8sim. Gozel's like Gezel 8sim is like trees or the eight. What does that actually mean in English? You have it there.
I must be honest with you. No, it says we shall return to you, hagozel azim. Gezel is theft and robbery.
Yeah. Return
Eight sim.
azim. Okay.
No, it's eight sim. Now, an eitza is clarity. It's like if you get an eitz on something, it means you get guidance. So it's guidance with regards to robbery and theft. You get what I'm saying? Guys, you did an accomplishment. You finished chapter 9, the toughest chapter. We got
Well,
chapter 10.
thanks to you.
No,
Please,
well,
God,
start
Hashem
to
will
you
make us
because you
finish
put all the
Bava
effort
Kamma.
in.
You put all the effort in, Damon.
But you,
100%.
yeah, you guys, thank you for being part of our learning together. And we've got one more chapter. Please, God, may we finish Bava Kamma. It's a big accomplishment.
So-
We've got one more chapter.
What page is it? You finished page 111.
Yeah, we finished 111. It finishes at the end of 119. We've got 8
Yeah,
doves
so
left.
you're starting on page 112
That-
from the next year.
So how many dots left?
No, we're not starting on 112. That's 111b. We're on
Oh, you
8.
finished up 111 A4.
Yeah.
And it's,
So how many
not an
dots left?
A4 size
About?
page, Damon.
We've got 8 daf.
8 dots. So we
But
should
your-
do
your
this in
Gemara-
about, we could be done in a month, eh? No,
Maybe.
2 months, 2 months.
Well,
Max.
yeah, listen, please,
But
God.
how many holidays done? How many done?
We've got a lot of holidays in between.